Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Big Three, the podcast where we unpack the biggest stories and insights shaping influencer marketing and the creator economy. I'm your host, Ceci. Today, I'm joined by Andy Cloyd, co-founder and CEO of Superfiliate, a platform helping over thousands of the world's top brands run and scale their creator partnerships across Shopify, Meta, and TikTok Shop. Andy and I have spoken a few times before, but it's been a while and a lot has changed in this industry. So today we're catching up. We're going deep on where creator marketing actually stands right now and unpacking what separates the brands building real programs from the ones still running one-off campaigns. Andy has a front row seat at all the shifts happening across thousands of brands. So that's exactly what we are unpacking today. Andy, welcome. Great to have you on. How's everything going?
Thank you, Ceci. It's so wonderful to be back. We're just excited to do these check-ins every once in a while because I think it's nice. You watch things happen so fast these days, and sometimes you want to zoom out and be like, what were we even talking about last time we connected? Or what were we talking about 2 months ago? And what are we talking about today? And I think it's just so fun to have opportunities like this. I'm very grateful to be on here and to jam with you on all the stuff that we're seeing because, to your point, we get to see tons of programs of brands and advertisers of all sizes and industries and objectives. And we're seeing stuff change super quickly. And we're excited about that. And we'll dive into some of that here in the next few minutes.
Absolutely. And to your point, Andy, a year, I know it's been a year since we last chatted, but a year in the industry feels like a decade, right? So tell us a bit about what have you been most focused on since we last spoke?
Yeah. I mean, I think, people often hear our name Superfiliate, and it's a little bit of a misnomer because I think it naturally makes people think, this is, very much a creator affiliate platform. And I think what we've seen over the last year is influencer programs, creator programs, they're just expanding so far beyond that. And they're really starting to impact, marketing teams and funnels at all stages. And where we're seeing the largest prioritization amongst our biggest customers, and now I think you're starting to see that amongst all of our customers, is the role that creators play in a paid media strategy. So creators are now the new creative production house. So they are sourcing content. They're creating content for brands to test across different personas, demographics, different audiences. They are now the way that brands test. And I think that's a convergence of a lot of things. I think for one, just this creator class of people who are trained on talking to a camera, creating good content, making content that is very optimized for like a paid media, paid ad format. But then I also think there's changes on the platform side. So you think about things like Andromeda inside of Meta and what TikTok is doing with their Spark Ads platform and thinking like, this content is really starting to be boosted. There's starting to be a larger emphasis put on volume of testing, variety of creative testing, all of these things. So what we've seen the impact of that be is brands are starting to figure out creators are actually my content farm. I used to quarterly go and do a huge high budget shoot. Now I'm working with 1,000 creators quarterly testing. People hear me say this all the time inside the company. Part of the strategy now is you kiss a lot of frogs to find the prince. The prince is now a piece of content that you put $100,000 of paid media budget behind. That's what we're really seeing as a shift, even just in the last 6 to 12 months.
Okay, let me ask you this, Andy. With everything that you just mentioned, how would you frame sort of your thesis of the creator economy? What does it look like right now?
Yeah, it's actually wonderful timed question because we just brought in a head of marketing for the first time in January. And this was actually an exercise that we were saying is, hey, we have all these product ideas, but what is actually our narrative and our thesis? And I think where we arrived was we think that creators are the backbone of the growth engine for any brand or advertiser across all pieces of their funnel. So whether that is top of funnel awareness, that is mid funnel, maybe creative for paid media, bottom of funnel affiliate conversions. It is how you communicate a new product launch. It is how you generate sales. It is how you test and find new audiences to get into. And so our kind of core thesis here in the market is creators are the backbone of growth. We call it creator-led growth, that then has different buckets like creator-led advertising, creator-led selling, you name it. But we are just seeing the budgets move in that direction. And it's not to go do one thing, but it's really to move all of the metrics that, a marketing team or a growth team is looking at.
Andy, from everything that you mentioned, you're seeing right now, from everything that you said, you're seeing shift and changing in the industry. Is there anything in particular that you think is genuinely surprising you, or that maybe people aren't paying close attention to right now?
I mean, I think it'd be very hard to not be a little drawn to the role that AI is going to play in all of this. And I think that
Absolutely.
we are very on the pulse looking at, an interesting question that is, w- what happens in a world where content is indistinguishable, like the creation of a piece of content is indistinguishable. And I think, we're starting to see, UGC generated videos that aren't an actual person. So we're starting to say, what does that mean for this industry? And I think for us, what that means is like things like audience, things like authenticity, things like the humanness level of content, the value of that is going to skyrocket. And we are
Yeah.
really starting to think about, how do we position our product, and how do we position even just the way that we help our customers succeed in that new paradigm based on the data that we have. So we think about, really pushing products to places where audience, following, trust, like authenticity is really highly valued. But at the same time, understanding we are also at a very interesting, time of the market with things like TikTok Shop and the mass scale generation of content across many, many creators. And, those worlds almost feel like they're at odds with each other. And that's why we're kind of like really sitting between and like seeing how this plays out and kind of building product on both sides of the market. But then for ourselves, AI is undoubtedly going to have a massive impact on the way that our users do their jobs. And we're thinking a lot internally now about, how do we bring the core primitives that all of our users are used to using chat and Claude and things like that in their own lives into their jobs very natively in the tools that they're already using. And that's one of the things that we're talking about a lot and super excited about.
Yeah. And I do know I have some questions about AI more specifically later in the conversation. I want to focus on, again, all the shifts that we're seeing. I want to focus on how brands are actually, living those shifts, experiencing those shifts. When you look at the brands and how brands are approaching creator marketing today versus, let's say, a year ago, what's the biggest shift that you're noticing?
Yeah. I would say the biggest shift that we're noticing is absolutely the move of spend from branded creative content towards creator content inside of an ad account. The
Okay.
paid media budget is the largest part of most marketing budgets. And we're just watching, as we have access to, hundreds of millions of ad spend. We're just watching budget move towards creator led content. So that is, sometimes that's UGC, sometimes that is whitelisted or partnership ads with high end creators. Month over month, the pie chart is just growing in terms of the
I was
budget
going to
that's
ask
going
you, yeah.
to that part of, the media budget, which for us is so interesting. And now what that's doing is it's creating this new question that we're solving from a product perspective. That is like, how do you now compensate creators, with that in mind? Like they are now
Mhm.
replacing a cost within a P&L that used to be, creative production budget. How do you start to think about, how do we reward creators for the upside that, when they create great content that does end up succeeding and paid? So that to us is most certainly, the biggest shift that we're seeing. And I think like ancillary or adjacent to that is also thinking about these creator communities and how these are not just like, hey, we have a one-off partnership, we're doing a campaign, we need, 20 creators that are lifestyle between the age of 25 and 45. Here's their rate. Great, let's spend it. We're seeing now like our brands are starting to view their creators as like an asset for the brand. They're used to support product launches. They're used to show up to IRL events. They're used to create creative for, ad campaigns and paid media. So I think there's kind of that like, hey, they're playing a role in like more parts of the marketing strategy. And therefore they are getting a more, secure, like duration of relationship with a brand that I think for us makes a lot of sense and like ups that authenticity and that personal nature that we were
Yeah.
mentioning in the previous question.
And how are you living that? I mean, how are you seeing that shift day to day at Super Affiliate? When brands come to you these days, what are they actually coming for? What are they asking for? How has that
Yeah.
conversation changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think, brands used to show up to us and they said, we want a best in class affiliate program to turn our creators into sellers for our brand. And we want to pay commissions and we want to do all that. That
That's
still happens, of course. However, when I look at like our inbound form, it is just without fail. There's two things that people are looking for. One is consolidation. Everybody's been using a bunch of tools for a lot of years. And I think people are really starting to realize with the
Mm,
connectivity of all these different strategies, cross platform, pieces of the funnel, cross strategy, that having all this stuff in one place is actually extremely important. And that is something that I think we're starting to build a great reputation for. And brands are really liking seeing that, which is, hey, when I generate a piece of content on platform X, and I don't mean X as in Twitter, I mean variable X, random platform, when I generate that content, that doesn't need to stay there. It can be used on Meta. It can be used in shorts. It can be used, and we're just starting to see that the importance of like consolidation is becoming very top of mind for brands. And then second, we're seeing brands, they want to crack partnership ads and they want to crack creator led advertising because what we're seeing, you get on Twitter, there's a lot of, famous people on there that are everyone's following and all they're seeing is partnership ads are the best performing ads in our account. Partnership ads are this. Partnership ads went from 4% to 20% of our spend. Everyone's super excited about that. However, the problem and where the rubber meets the road is how do you operationalize that? How do you execute it?
yeah.
Because it's not easy to coordinate collecting 100 pieces of content from 100 different creators, testing them all in the Meta account, doubling down on what works, managing content rights, making sure that creators feel like they're, getting the feedback they need to then make better content in the future. And just, so we're really seeing a lot of people that are saying, I'm on Twitter and I'm seeing everybody talk about this and I don't know the first place to start. And and that's why a lot of our job right now is actually on the education side. Like, yes, I think we have an amazing product to help people, but I would say our creator media team, Ryan, Chris, Brian, they're getting on calls and they're not going through the Superfiliate platform and software. They're saying theoretically
Yeah.
or strategically, this is how you should
This
be
is what you
approaching
should be
this
doing.
strategy. And then maybe we're the right platform. Maybe we're not. We're fine with that either way. Like we're believers that like more people that are writing these trends and operationalizing these strategies, that'll create a better outcome for everybody, brands, creators, advertisers, platforms, you name it.
Yeah. Andy, again, I think that you have a very front row seat to a lot of conversations with brands. Tell me, if you had to put it very bluntly, what would you say is the real difference between a brand that is running campaigns and a brand that's actually building a creator channel, a creator program?
Yeah, I think brands that are building a program, they view creators as an extension of their brand voice. And they are willing to
Okay.
let that voice be interpreted by those creators. They are not saying our campaign, we need 40 people saying these things, um, or 40 people saying these words in front of Target, etc. They're saying brands that are building programs and communities, they're saying we have these 40 people that we believe are on brand and good advocates for, the message and brand that we're trying to put out there in the world. And we are going to let them consistently over time, inject us into their content strategy. And, we were at the Meta Creator Connect conference yesterday and 4 creators up on stage without fail, every single one, they're like, hey, do you have any advice for brands? And all of them are like, let us do our thing. This is how I make
100%.
content. I have 1 million followers. There's 1 million people who have clicked that button that say they like the way I do things. Let me do my
Let me
thing.
do my
And I
thing.
think,
Yeah.
right. And I think these brands, so that's what I would say is like the brands that are winning and the brands that are building programs are one, letting these people do their thing. And two, they're going back to those people and they're,
Yeah.
using them over and over again and they're understanding, hey, this post might not have done great from a, last click conversion, but my God, it's perfect for this ad that we want to run, or it's perfect for et cetera, et cetera. And just thinking about there's a lot of ways to succeed with these partnerships and these partners.
Okay, let me ask you this, Andy. Once a brand finally figures out creates a creator program, what happens when they try to scale it? I mean, where do the things tend to fall apart once the brands try to scale that program? What's the pattern that you keep seeing? What's what catching your attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think frankly, there's just a lot of in the weeds execution associated with these
Okay.
partnerships that is
What do you
it
mean?
takes, you think about sourcing, negotiation, editing,
Okay.
contracting, collection, reporting, all of these things take a lot of manual
Mm.
time. And as you scale, like, the goal of building these platforms is to be able to go from 10 to 100 to 1,000 creators without going from 1 to 10 to 100 people on your team. And you have to start to think about efficiency. So for me, like where I'm seeing things often break, there are very few brands that are hitting the saturation point of good quality creator partnerships. That is not, that is not the
Okay.
breaking point. There is a of creators that I think can be like a brand fit out there. I think where we see things break is in the operational side of things. It's in the back and forth. It's when, you creator marketer or influencer marketer open up your inbox in the morning and there's 119 messages,
Oh
and
my God.
everybody wants, these revisions. And so one person, doesn't want to do revisions and one person is, not fulfilling their contract and you got to send out product to 400 people today. And also there's, we're planning the Q3 campaign already, despite Q2 is now getting
I'm
executed on.
already stressed.
This is the reality. And I think
Yeah.
what seems like it's working at, when it's like, hey, you're getting this started and the paid media team is like, "Oh my God, we love this. We just got an amazing piece of content and you tested 4 creators and one worked." It's everybody's high fiving. And then the paid team says, "Hey, next month, can we have 10?" And then you're like, okay, I mean, yes. And then you start to go and, okay, we found our creator partners. The content's good, but who's editing it? Who's paying it? Who's making sure that we're actually looking at the performance and then going back and doubling down on the ones that are working and cutting the ones that aren't? And who's making sure that we're not violating
Yeah.
our usage rights? We got 30 days. It's day 40 now, and we're still
Yeah.
spending on it. So I think, it really just is in that execution layer. And I think that's where it's like, it's incumbent on us as like platforms to try to address that and try to like what we always say at Superfiliate is automate everything except for relationship building,
Yeah.
because that to us is like that is the personal touch that'll allow brands to differentiate in the future when everyone's converging on features
Absolutely.
and products and all of this. Like you got to be able to be relationship first and build those personal connections.
Absolutely. Andy, let me ask you this. Beyond that operational headache and chaos that you just mentioned, what does that fragmentation actually cost a brand in terms of performance and, as you just put it, as you just mentioned, it's
I think we'll go on the performance side first. I think for one, it just means things are falling through the cracks. It means that as we all are like this, we all get stressed. We look at our inbox of 100 things, and all of a sudden we're unable to prioritize what's actually important because there's just so much stuff in there. I think it's the same thing with a lot of these creator programs. You partnered with 100 people last month. And you're just trying to stay afloat. You're trying to get reporting out. You're trying to get the next thing going. And you forget that moment of like, whoa, this one person actually outperformed the next 40
yeah,
combined. I need to be on the phone with that person. I need to be on a Zoom call connecting that person with the founder of the company and saying, hey, we, have a quick call with our founders. We want to like double down and make this a long-term partnership. So I think you just you get caught up in the operational execution and chaos, and then you end up missing the opportunity to build like unique relationships that are going to create that what I mentioned previously, which is
yeah.
these creators becoming an extension of your brand voice, your brand ethos, all of that. And so I think that's like a very quick and easy way that we're seeing, people fail. And then I think also too, just like you just don't like one of the most common things, we built an entire tool inside of our meta ad suite because what we were seeing is influencer marketers were wasting money securing whitelisting or partnership or paid usage rights for content that the paid media team never found out they had. And they never put budget behind it and they never tested it. And that is just money that evaporates. And that's all it's not anyone's, oversight. It's not intentional negligence. It's actually just there's 1,000 things going and those dots just never connected. And we see that all the time. So that's definitely a place that we see things breaking as well.
Okay, so let's recap for a minute, Andy. When you see the brands that are succeeding, the brands that are creating the programs and scaling them? What are they doing differently?
And that are succeeding, scaling these programs, they're building creator communities. They are treating these people as an extension of their team, and they're building deep and lasting relationships to be able to continue to come back to what they know will work and people that they see as advocates for the brand.
Okay. And let me ask you this. We talked about the operational chaos before. What role does the structure play in those brands that are scaling and doing the things properly? Things like discovery, agreements, tracking, and payments. Why does that still feel like a missing piece for so many teams, even ones with real budgets behind them?
Yeah, I think the actual campaign execution still feels so fragmented, oftentimes because there's very rarely a tool that does everything that they need. So these things are living in 12 different places. The content's in my social listening tool, the campaign details are in my Google Sheet, the affiliate links managed in my affiliate platform. And I think bringing all that data together is actually a huge problem. Not so subtle plug. This week, we actually released our super brief, which actually is solving this exact problem, which is making sure that, you aggregate all of this
Okay.
inside of one place. It is finding your creators, briefing them, collecting content, asking for revisions, aggregating analytics, managing payments, and being able to look at all of that in a consolidated or per creator way, because we thought we were going to release this product, 7 months ago, and we released it this week. And the reason we did that is we realized we're just about to add to the problem. If we ship this, we're just going to be another tool in that
Okay.
12 tool process that we mentioned, unless we actually take the time to watch a bunch of influencer marketers execute on this and say, okay, we can replace that. We can replace that. This step is now here. And like I said, we were planning the launch, I think, last summer, and we got it out today.
That you took a step back and look at the landscape before launching it.
Yeah, well, my poor co-founder, Anders, who's our chief product officer, I think he received a lot of feedback loud and clear from some of our more vocal users, which we very much
Mm.
appreciate. But to your point, I just think it's so important that we exist to make our users' lives easier, not harder. And yeah, if we're going to go solve a problem, we need to solve it right. So it was a
Yeah.
fun one.
Andy, I want to shift gears for a minute here and go back to something that you mentioned at the very beginning of the conversation, which is AI. I think we need to go a bit deeper. Again, there's a lot of noise around AI right now. I'm curious about, what do you think AI done right actually look like inside a creator program, or maybe inside the creator economy more broadly? Where do you see real value versus hype?
Yeah. I mean, I think oftentimes the difference between hype and real value is just time. It's
Okay.
what's hype today will be real value in 6 months. And I think I'm a very strong believer in that. But when it comes to AI, like the superfiliate strategy and approach has certainly been, we think it is our job as both technologists and experts in the space to bring the latest and greatest of AI to our users. Our influencer marketing managers have enough to deal with trying to build relationships with these creators, trying to report to their bosses, making sure they're hitting their numbers. And it's our job as platform builders to help them ultimately succeed at their job. And, we've taken a very hard stance on that. So what we are now doing is we know that these users are familiar with things like chat and like things like Claude now. And we're saying, how can we take those primitives, bring them into our tool to help our users succeed in a way that's like familiar and native to them, but also making sure they're leveraging the best and brightest. So, what that actually looks like practically for us is thinking about, hey, what if I can just speak to the computer, maybe that's even verbally, and it does what I want it to do. I want to do a campaign with our 50 best performing creators from that campaign. I want to give them this product and I want it to go out on this date. And here's the payment terms, etc. And then
Yeah.
we're
And it
coming up
actually
with a
goes.
way. Yeah. And we're building that. And we're very fortunate that we're building software at a time where that is possible. That can
Yeah,
happen. That is happening. And so we're
exactly.
super excited about that. And I think, I wrote something about this today actually on LinkedIn. Like 3 months ago, I actually felt like we were like paddling into the wave and it was really exhausting. Like everyone's AI automated my whole influencer program with Claude outreach, whatever. That was
AI
called hype.
generated
Right.
everything.
That would, and I think that was hype and in some instances disingenuous. But like that was this exhausting paddling into the wave. And now I really feel like we are on top of the wave. And I take no
Okay.
credit for that. I give that to Anders and our engineering team and all the people who are just waking up every single day, making sure that we are on top of this. It's been so fun. And now, like, what we're seeing is like it is impacting the way we operate as a company, but most importantly, the way that our users are going to operate. And that's from a feature velocity perspective.
Yeah.
So we are now more quickly able to take feedback from our users and turn it into product, but also coming up with the things that our users might not even know is possible, but we can bring to them. And I think one of the most exciting, fun parts for the broader creator economy is like AI has unlocked the ability to generate extreme synthesis of content at scale. Like we can analyze so many things at such a
Yeah.
nuanced level, and we can like what used to be a needle in a haystack is now a quick type a query, and it's amazing. And we're so excited to think about like the resolution with which brands are now going to be able to find the right partners embedded in the right content for the right product, reaching the right audience. All of that is just so unlocked by this. But so yeah, you can probably tell we're pretty excited. It's kind of
Yeah.
like it's kind of like the conversation all day, every day. And I think like 2 months ago, everybody was rolling their eyes and saying, "Oh, not again." And then people just keep having their minds blown and they have
You're
their
thinking
moment.
about Andy, that's from a more operational perspective. Let's focus on AI generated content.
Yeah.
I mean, as it becomes more and more prevalent, I know there's an argument that maybe authentic creator relationships are actually becoming more valuable as a result, not less, not less. Do you see that playing out in practice? What does that mean for how brands should be thinking about their creator programs right now?
I mean, I think the value of human and authentic and real is going to skyrocket in the future broadly. That is not just limited to the creator economy. I think we're going to see that in all sorts of
Mm.
different aspects of our lives. However, I think like what I would say in this specific regard, that I think might be a little more like helpful or at least interesting,
Okay.
people might is
Great.
well, I just really believe that now it takes a more discerning eye. People think TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, those are the social platforms. Okay, that's the backbone of the creator economy. However, within those ecosystems, there are very different things. And you have to ask, are
Mm.
people showing up for entertainment or like relatability and inspiration? So, like, I think AI generated content, an algorithmic feed is oftentimes rooted in a single objective, which is entertainment. It is to get you to stay there and keep looking. I don't think people really care if it's AI generated or what. If it's just, am I getting the dopamine hit to make me watch the next
Mm.
video? I think that
Okay.
Right. But however, if you then think about your social graph of the people that you're following, particularly in IG, the stories that you're seeing, that is where people are turning, I think, to see authentic. I know this is human. This is a person operating in the world that I maybe care about what they're doing or whatever. And I think the value of that goes up. So I guess like
Mm.
to sum that up would be is like, it's overly simplistic to be like, I think AI generated content is good or bad or will succeed or will not succeed. It's just you have to ask where. And in these algorithmic feeds, I think it will proliferate, it will flourish. We're all going to love watching the hyper realistic, we're back in the Colosseum in Rome, like we see ourselves or
Yeah.
whatever doing the thing. And you're like, wow, this is so cool. But then what do you think about, okay, I need to go, buy a new pair of shoes. I don't want to see whatever slop, whatever brand generated. I
Yeah.
want to see that person that I know just ran the Boston Marathon and PR'd and actually loves their
Absolutely.
shoes. That's like, so I think you just have to break it down a little bit and say, like, I trust that person more than I used to trust anything, but I also don't care when I'm over here being entertained. And that's
Yeah.
kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I think that as a consumer, I want both in my feed, right?
Yeah.
I want to be entertained by maybe sometimes the AI stuff, and then you're absolutely right. When I want like an honest opinion, or when I want to buy something, I go to my favorite creator to see what they recommend. Absolutely.
Let me ask you something. Do you want to know all the time if it's real or not? You don't care?
No, I mean, I care when, again, when I'm looking for, I don't know, a new smoothie recipe, or when I'm looking for, a skincare brand recommendation or something like that. If it's
Right.
entertainment, I don't really care. And where do you think with this, with all this AI conversation, where do you think should brands be careful not to to automate too much?
It's a good question. I mean,
Mm,
at the end of the day, we are getting more discerning at what is AI and what isn't. I think, you know, and over time that may go away, but I truly believe you watch the same thing that's happened in outbound email. So cold email used to be such an amazing place for software companies to generate pipeline because the people who had cracked it were really good at it. They were personalizing it, they were doing it at scale, whatever. Then there was a proliferation of tools that made it really easy for everyone to converge on the same strategy. And all of a sudden, cold outbound almost became a not ineffective channel entirely
mm,
because everyone caught on and everyone's like that, delete, 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 delete. I think you see a very similar thing here in influencers. Like everyone now has the same APIs, they have the same email addresses, they're coming in with the same offer. And I think it's like just doing what everyone else is doing is not going to work unless the only way that doing what everybody else is doing will work is if you're the highest bidder. And therefore, that means you're spending the most money. And I don't think that's what any marketer is trying to do. Every marketer is trying to get the most bang for their buck. And I think the way that you do that is by standing out, by doing the things that other people aren't doing. And maybe it's even going out and saying, I'm actually not asking you for a post. We're hosting a creator event in Austin and we'd love for you to come. And, and it's just like things like that. So using, like, I think AI is great for a lot of like the back of house and like the operational part of things. But when it comes to that like one to
yeah.
one interaction, we're seeing these creators, we see it all the time. Like the people posting, here's my gifting haul for the week. And it's like 9,000 products that the
Yeah.
Amazon person can't even they're like falling down the stairs because they have 14 things. And you're just like, that's probably not a good use of all of those
Mm,
companies' budgets, but they're just spraying and praying. Whereas I think,
definitely.
if you talk to them before and they're expecting it and they're anticipating it and they're excited, and then you check in after it arrives and you say, how is it? I think it goes a long way. So I think, it goes back to our ethos, like automate everything that's not relationship building. And I think some people get lazy and try to automate relationship building.
Andy, let's start focusing a bit on the future as creator marketing continues to mature. What do you think the gap between the brands doing this well and the brands still figuring out will look like in a few years? Or even next year? We
Yeah.
said before, a
I
year
mean,
in this industry is like a decade.
hey, the only thing that I can say I'm certain of about next year is that brands will spend more money on creators than they did this year. I feel highly confident in that. The data seems to support that as well. I think beyond that, like, look, we're going to see some really interesting things play out in the next 12 months. We're going to see, we're going to see it play out where when it becomes indiscernible if a piece of content is, AI generated or an actual human. And we're going to see how the platforms respond to that. Is that going to be watermarks? Is it going to be labeling? There's proof of human, POH, whatever we want to call it. How do we start to think about that in these channels? I think we're going to see too. One thing that we're very excited about is we're seeing more of an openness across these platforms to embed product links and shopping links into more content. YouTube, Instagram, both allowing it now. TikTok Shop, obviously having native in platform commerce. I think like we're just starting to really see platforms are starting to understand that there is such a strong ecosystem of creator and brand partnerships happening on here.
Yeah.
And you're going to continue to see, I think, supported more natively inside of these platforms, which I think is overall, a wonderful trend for creators, for platforms, for brands, you name it. I think everybody the market wins when you remove friction, and that's dead weight loss prior. So, I'm very excited to see that. And I do believe, I know it is like the in vogue thing, but like, I think truly, extremely undeniably human, even flawed, is going to become very in. Like imperfect will
Right.
become the thing. Like imperfect. I mean, I even saw it today on Twitter. Some guy made a little app and you like write your email, you take your AI slop and then you put it in there and then you like decide like how humanized you want it to be. Like kind of human, like kind of chill, whatever, tons of mistakes.
Oh,
And then
no.
like the far end of the slider was like CEO speak, and then it just translates it to like THX, see you next week or something. It was funny, but
Love that.
that's yeah.
Yeah. And I think we had a great conversation so far. I do want to bring it all down to the or up to the leadership, like a leadership conversation. I mean, if you were a CMO today, what is the single first thing that you would change about how your team approaches creative partnership?
It was a great question. If I was a CMO and I was approaching creator partnerships today, I think the first thing that I would do is I would have every single person in my department talk about how they think creators impact their remit or their part of the business or their part of the marketing strategy, and really understanding you're going to hear a lot of different things. Your media team is going to say something totally different than your influencer partnerships team, which is
Yeah.
going to say something different than your social team. And I think aggregating those assets to or those insights to think about, okay, creators are going to be this thing at the center. And then from there are all these pieces of my business. And I need to understand how creators impact all of those. So then I can start to think about when I have these strategies, a more specific, a more comprehensive take on what I think about a creator partnership and like what I think is valuable and how it's going to impact the decisions that we make with our budget
Yeah.
based on our objectives. So, I think it really is just understanding how did the folks within my org perceive the impact of creator on their own piece of the business, and then based on our priorities and that, how do we then allocate budget to then go move those metrics in the way that we need to.
Yeah. Well, Andy, and last question to close us out. What's the one thing that you think this industry needs to stop doing, and what are you most excited to see happen next?
See, one thing the industry needs to do to stop doing. It's a good
From
one.
from any angle, from any like perspective, nothing like in particular.
Let's see. I think people are largely not creative enough in who and how they approach creators, brands and advertisers. I think oftentimes I see a lot of people, filtering by the same things in the database or all, in TikTok shop, like, you know, reverse sort by max GMV. And I'm going to reach out to all those people. I think like a lot of people just taking like the same obvious strategies like ensures that you get, the same obvious results.
Mhm.
And I think I just see a lot of that. And I love when I see people really think outside of the box and do something so weird. Like, like sometimes you're like watching a comedy skit on Reels or whatever, and then there's like randomly this product in there, and you're like, oh my God, that just stood out so much more. And I was
Yeah,
not expecting that. And it wasn't even organically placed, but it was kind of funny. And I loved that. So I
totally.
think like that's something that I definitely
You
see.
want that?
And
You want to see more of that?
yeah, I want more of that in the future for sure, because I think it's the most fun, way for, creators to continue to build in a way that like allows them to be trusted when it matters. It's
Okay.
kind of like the boy who cried wolf. Like, if you're always crying wolf, then when the wolf comes, nobody believes you. It's the same thing with like influencing your audience. It's like,
How you put
yeah,
it? Yeah, love that. Andy, I think we had a great conversation so far. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience? Any final comments, final thoughts?
only thing that I would say is, if you're a brand or an advertiser and creators are not at least one of the first two or three bullet points on your, 2027 planning or second half of 2026, I think, certainly revisit that because I think, we're just seeing the best brands in the world adopt this at lightning speed. And like, we're just entering like what is certainly the most exciting
Yeah.
part of, the creator economy. And I think we're seeing an amazing maturation of how platforms, advertisers, and creators are all working together. And like the time is now. And it is not one of those things that you're going to want to be behind the eight ball on because the people who are building like category defining brands right now are thinking about it from before they even start their business and before they even launch their business. Yeah, get started now.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for adding that, and again, thank you so much for joining us, sharing your perspective, your insights. Let's hope that it's not another year until we connect again. And yeah, to everyone else listening, thanks as always for tuning in to the Big Three. We'll be back soon with more conversations and insights from across the creator economy. Talk soon.
Thank you. Bye bye.